556.
556.
Oh, so.
Some of you young kids should pay attention to. What do you pay someone to teach for 2 years?
Well, they gave him some chickens. I think it was either 9 to 11 chickens. They gave him 2 pigs and a milk cow. Now, you understand that was about, from where he lived up in northwest Alabama, that was about between 350 and 400 miles. Now, you'll drive that in a day. It took them several weeks to go in a mule and wagon. If they had an automobile, it was hard to get anywhere because you were on dirt roads that were muddy. They got stuck 3 or 4 times on their trips. Every time they went somewhere, if they got to a steep hill and it had been raining, they slip and slide in the ditch. But anyway, I don't know why he ended up getting Tom to come down there, but he did. I guess it was because they knew him. So yeah, I could just understand the conversation between Frank. Would you get Tom down here and teach singing schools? It was either that, or he told him, y'all need to get somebody down here to teach some singing schools. They didn't have much singing down there, but we did really, in my early years, have some great singing down there, I assure you.
When we were little, we went somewhere to singing every Sunday, and when we moved to Mobile, I did not have a clue that not everybody could sing until Sunday. So when I found out that not everybody did and knew what sacred work singing was, I was just appalled. So anyway, we went on, and Pam led a lot of different things, but I was extremely shy. I couldn't even tell you my own name, and I would have just died rather than stand up and talk in front of people. So my grandmother and granddaddy used to bribe me, and they would give me money if I would leave. One time my grandmother tried to give me chewing gum out of her purse to leave, and that didn't work. Because I could get chewing gum anytime out of her purse. I could get anything I wanted out of her purse, but that didn't work. So their friends and my grandparents would give me money if I would lead, so I would make a nice little haul if I would lead. And of course, my mother and daddy just thought that was awful, but you know, I know not the best they were gonna get. But the only thing I ever remember really leading was Jacob's vision. And I just didn't venture out much from my little safeties out there. So that's what I remember, and we sang an awful lot. So at home, they would sit down and they'd work on these little parts forever, and I remember thinking, just get it right and go on with it, you know? So, but they would just work incessantly on these little parts that they learned to do. So, but when we would go to singings, there would be lots and lots of people. It was nothing for there to be a singing this size every Sunday. And as we got older and we would come back and were there less and less frequently, you know, they began to dwindle and people began to die out. And then when I went away to college and came back, I didn't know anybody anymore. They were all dead and gone, and instead of Mother and Daddy being the younger ones in the bunch, they were now the top, you know, supposed to be in the older people there in the bunch. So that has been quite a change, a shift in dynamics, and it has been sad to watch. But now I'm the So anyway, but it was interesting, and we didn't know that everybody was not a part of this culture. We did not know that.
So anyway, I didn't know they could deliver mail, but I just got this carrier pigeon, I believe. And it is from Daphne and Sharon. If you were here on the Independence Day singing, they were seated right here.
Daphne,
Yeah, Daphne and Sharon. You want to qualify this before I read it?
No, I'll beat you in them road.
I'm going to read this most literally. It's perfectly penned. It says, "Away once I met a young man named Jeff Sheppard. He thought he was Mr. It. He was going to Auburn. Him and his starched shirts, creased pants, and red hair. He was something. After a few years of seeing him at singings, he went missing. Seems he had joined the service. Next time I saw him, he had a sweet young wife named Shelbie, and I had married Jimmy Causey. Not long after that, they went south to make their fame and fortune. When they made their fortune, they moved back to this part of the country. While they lived in Mobile, I grew older, but Jeff didn't age any. He still had red hair, no gray at all, but mine was turning. He started calling me Granny, and told everyone that he had known me when he was a real young boy. And that I was dating the boys when he was just knee-high to me. Over the years, our friendship grew, seeing each other at singings, and who could forget the trips on Miss Ruth's bus? And I think we saw some pictures of them on that bus. Jimmy and I became good friends with them. When Jimmy died, suddenly, Jeff and Shelbie were in Chicago on business. As soon as they heard that Jimmy had died, they were calling. We're on our way home. I told them no, stay and finish their business trip. But I knew then, as I know now, Jeff and Shelbie will always be there for me. Love you bunches, Granny Duffy. There's a little other note tacked on here from Sharon, and that's her little girl.
Yeah, the little girl.
Miss Shelbie, do you remember the trip to Goshen? I hadn't started singing yet, and I was sitting by you. There were flies, and one landed on your book. I slammed your book closed and killed a fly in your book. I will never forget the look on your face. When we opened your book, and there it was, a dead fly. Sorry we didn't have the opportunity to give it a proper funeral. I heard that Mr. Jeff could really preach a good fly funeral. Love, Sharon.
What that is reference to is, you know, you have to keep something going on that bus all the time to keep that many people lively. And everybody had gotten quiet, so some of us back there in the back found this dead fly in the window. And of course, Jeff just, you know, immediately, he was going to preach the funeral. That went on. And if you don't think that wasn't a hoot, you should have been around. We learned to just say what we thought, forget it, and go on back to something else.
I didn't forget.
I didn't either, but we like to make him think that. And people think we're arguing, but we're not. We're just yeah. Okay.
183.
You're back.
somebody of a certain standing to get a letter from Mr. Lonnie Rogers. I tell you, if I got a letter from Mr. Lonnie Rogers, I'd stay home from work that day. And if the boss complained, I'd just say, hey. So this is a letter from Lonnie Rogers. It's called Recollections. I was ready to like Jeff Sheppard and his family because my dad, Frank Rogers, admired and liked Jeff's father and the other World War I vets who sang at Jordan's Chapel. That was one singing that my dad did not want to miss because of the people there. I heard my dad talk about them so many times. I knew that my father was a good judge of character, so I knew that these are people that would impress me. I learned to like these same men that had made such a good impression on my father. Thus, it was natural for me to like Jeff, since he was the son of one of my heroes. I learned to like Jeff on his own when I saw that he was such a strong supporter of Sacred Heart. Both Jeff and Shelbie come from families that actively supported this music. My wife Vivian and I had many fond memories of trips and singings with Jeff and Shelbie. I have learned that Jeff is always fair. He is not prejudiced. He is willing to listen to all sides before making a decision. He is always Jeff, no matter where he goes. He never puts on a show. He's always down to earth. He is pleasant to be with and has a good sense of humor. He supports Sacred Heart 100%. Shelbie, like her mother, has been an excellent singer who is devoted to Sacred Heart. She is a lot of fun to travel with, just as Jeff is. They both have a delightful sense of humor. Being in their presence is always a pleasant experience. Going to Muscadine has always been important to me because of this couple. Both of them were very helpful on the bus tours. Ruth knew that she could count on them. I think we're very fortunate to have people like the Sheppards, and David, and Karen Ivy, who do so much for SHMHA and the Fasola camp. I am proud to say that these people are some of my very best friends. So, David?
Not much else could be said. I first got to know Jeff and Shelbie about 30 years ago. And they have, since then, through that time, been encouragers and supporters of me personally, many of you. When I was younger, I was young, and Jeff would ask me to sit in the front with him, sign him at a big singer, let me cue music before anyone else would. Shelbie, then when she started editing and publishing the minutes book back in the 90s, 95 was it, Shelbie's first year, she asked me to help her, which she didn't really need any of my help. She allowed me to help her as we sort of got the book. As you know it now, look that you see this so well done and still by Judy, she let me help her. So I've just done a lot of work with them and been very fortunate to have spent a lot of time and also enjoyed that hospitality in the house. If I ever talked to them, I said, well, I've got to go to Auburn on this trip or that trip. Well, come by and stay with us. Would you come and stay with us? And we've done it many times. It's just been, all of it has been very kind. So, regarding camp, a few of us have been talking about the idea of having a camp for singing. And that was, we wanted to do something like that because the old way was to have 1 week or 2 week long singing schools in which people would go sometime during the day. I went to 1 week singing schools when I was young, and they'd be held each night during the week, and you'd have a singing at the end of the week. And those have just gone by the wayside. The times don't allow it. People have too many other things in their lives to set aside that much time, it seems. We haven't had those in many years. So we thought the next best thing would be to have a camp where we would be together like we are here. And we didn't know what to do to exactly have a camp. You have to have a place. You have to know what to do when you were there. And we've just been talking about it. And we said, well, we've been here a year or two. And so one day Jeff calls me up and he says, I think I have found a place that we can have a camp. And it was Camp Lee. Jeff and Shelbie live about 3 or 4 miles from here, not very far at all. It always been here. We've been talking about it, but we didn't know it. So Jeff and I came down and did a tour and worked it out to have the camp the next year. So that was in 2002, and we started having the camp in 2003. And without Jeff, we wouldn't have this camp, and it wouldn't be what it is without him. And let me tell you another little story about the first year. So again, we didn't really know how to do things very well, and we didn't have much money to do it with, and we wanted to make it affordable. So we had 3 days of camp, 3 full days like we have now, and we bought 2 t-shirts for each person. And after the first day, everyone took off their t-shirts and put them in a pile, and Shelbie took them home and washed and dried every t-shirt and brought it back for us to use. And so that you might think, well, okay, they're clothes washers. This was for about 80 people. And she stayed up till about 4:30, I think, in the morning, washing and drying t-shirts that night to get back to us the next day. That's the type of work they do all the time. Not many people know that little story. So, I told at the other camp, when we had this session, that Jeff and Shelbie are what I call blue-collar Sacred Heart people. People who work all the time. Most things you don't see. And yeah, they go to bus trips and to camp and big singings, but they also go to these little, small singings with maybe 20 or 30 people. And if Jeff wasn't there, they wouldn't have anybody to key the music. They wouldn't have to sing. For years and years, they've done that as well as me. So we just really appreciate you.
Someday I'll laugh at you like that.
195. Shelby, I think you should come up here and lead us, because we can't lead it the way you do.
Let me tell you a little story about Stuart.
That's why it wasn't about me.
And singing down in,
Wherever you down at the state
no,
convention.
it wasn't, it was over at,
Different story.
what was it?
Jeff Morrison Crossroads.
Yeah, that's where it was. But anyway, Stuart was just a little guy. And he,
He wasn't that big.
well, he wasn't that big either. So when the singing was over, he was ready to change it to something that was more appropriate from him. So instead of going back in the church to change his clothes, he got up the back of the pickup truck and changed his clothes. And David came up to him and said, "Stuart, you aren't going to be doing that." He says, "Miss Shelby wouldn't care."